Chosen one, there is something I need you to know about today, not tomorrow, not when things finally fall into place, not when you finally feel like the person you have been trying to become. Today. Right now. In the middle of exactly where you are. You did something. Something the world did not notice, did not mark, did not reward. Something you may have already half forgotten because it was so ordinary, so quiet, so entirely without audience that it barely left a trace in your own memory. But God noticed. And what God felt when he saw you do it, that quiet, unhurried, unperformed thing, was not disappointment. It was not patience. It was not the careful approval of someone waiting for you to do better. It was a smile, a real one, the kind that comes from genuine delight, the kind that says, "There you are. That is who you are. I see it." You have no idea how much that moment mattered. But by the time this message is over, you will. Because what you did today is not isolated, it is a pattern. A pattern that runs through the most extraordinary lives ever lived. And it tells me something very specific about who you are, and what season you are standing on the edge of. Stay with me. This is not a general message, this is yours. And before we go any further, I want to tell you what is waiting for you if you stay until the end of this. By the time this message is finished, you are going to understand exactly what that moment was and why it carries the weight it carries. You are going to see yourself through a lens that most people never access. You are going to walk away with specific words to speak over yourself, a way to hold your ordinary days differently, and an understanding of the season you are actually in, not the one you think you are in. None of that is exaggerated. All of it is waiting, so stay. Now, let us begin. Think about the last day or two of your life, not the big moments, not the prayers you planned, the goals you set, the decisions that carried obvious weight. I mean the in-between spaces, the quiet parts, the moments when no one was watching and you still chose something. Maybe you stayed gentle when everything in you had every right to be hard. Maybe you held back a response that would have landed like a wound, even though it was true, even though you had earned the right to say it. Maybe you kept going at something, quietly, without announcement, when stopping would have been completely justified and no one would have blamed you. Maybe you gave something to someone, your patience, your time, your presence, without any guarantee it would be received or remembered. Maybe you chose to forgive something, not out loud, not with ceremony, just a quiet internal releasing of a thing you had been gripping. You probably did not frame it as anything spiritual. You probably did not think, this is the moment. It was just a choice, small, private, unremarkable to anyone watching. But here is what I need you to understand. That is exactly the kind of moment that captures heaven's attention, not the performance, the presence, not the announcement, the quiet choice, not the sacrifice made on a public stage, the one made in shadow, in the middle of an ordinary day, with nothing to gain and no one to impress. And you did that. Recently, maybe today, maybe in the last 24 hours. One of those things I just described, or something just like it, is what you did. And you almost did not count it, but God did. Now, you might be wondering, why would something so small carry any weight at all? That is the question I want to spend the next few minutes answering, because the answer is going to change the way you see your ordinary days for the rest of your life. There is a pattern in the oldest texts, in the lives of the people we consider extraordinary, in every honest account of how God moves in a human life. And the pattern is this: God consistently shows up in the quiet, not the performance. Think about David, not David the king, not David with the crown and the throne and the armies. Think about David before any of that existed, alone in a field, watching sheep. No stage, no audience, no one recording the moment for history. Just a young man doing a quiet, faithful thing that no one required him to do brilliantly. And it was in that field, in those hidden years, that the heart was formed. A heart God described as being after his own. Not after the palace was built, in the field, before anyone was watching. Think about Ruth, standing on a road with her mother-in-law, a widow with nothing to offer, no political capital, no leverage, no reason to stay except love and loyalty. No one required her to keep going. There was no reward promised. She chose faithfulness in a moment where the reasonable thing was to walk away. And the text tells us that moment was seen. That loyalty shifted the arc of an entire lineage. Think about the woman with the jar. She walked into a room, broke open something irreplaceable, and poured it out without asking permission, without explanation, in a way that everyone present criticized as wasteful and excessive. And Jesus said, "Wherever this is told, what she did will be remembered." God does not forget the quiet acts. He marks them. The pattern is ancient. Every time God leans in, every time something in heaven shifts with delight, it is not at the grand gesture, it is at the genuine one. The unforced one. The one done in the private spaces of a life where there was no audience and no reward, and the person did it anyway because it was simply who they were. That is what you did. And here is where it gets even more specific, because science, in its own language, has been discovering something that echoes this exact pattern inside the human brain. For the past several decades, neuroscientists at institutions like Princeton, Stanford and MIT have been studying what happens in the brain during moments of what they call genuine presence, not performance, not anxiety about outcomes, not the mental state of someone trying to earn approval, genuine, unforced presence and authentic action. And what they found is a specific brainwave called gamma. And what they found about gamma is this: it is not a state you achieve through effort, it is a state you return to, because you were born with it fully active. Children under 7 years old, their brains are flooded with gamma. Watch a child choose to be kind before they understand reputation. Watch a child give something away before they understand economics. Watch a child love without calculation. That is what a brain in full gamma looks like. Fully alive, fully itself, fully present to what is real, without performing for what is observed. Neuroscientists call what happens next the decline effect. Beginning around age 7, as the external reward system of education and environment kicks in, gamma begins to quiet, not because anything is broken, because the brain is being trained to respond to applause rather than alignment, to perform for approval rather than act from identity. And over years and decades, what was natural becomes effortful. The quiet, genuine choices become rarer, not because the person became worse, because the brain was redirected. But here is what is remarkable. Gamma can be reactivated. It was never destroyed. It was dormant. Dr. Robert Lake, a neuroscientist with 34 years of research, spent years developing a way to bring that frequency back. Not through meditation, which takes months of consistent practice most people cannot sustain. Not through expensive biofeedback equipment that runs $7,000 for a home setup. He developed a 7-minute audio track that uses a technology called brain entrainment, the same science studied by Harvard, MIT and Columbia, to bring the brain back into gamma frequency. The price of the original is $49, but for people who encounter it through a source like this, it is $39, and it comes with a full money-back guarantee, no conditions. This is not a miracle, it is a tool, a very good one, for people who are ready to stop fighting, to feel like themselves, and start simply being themselves again. If that is you, the only verified link is in the description and the pinned comment below. Be careful of other sources. There are counterfeit versions online that do not contain the actual entrainment technology, just ordinary audio with no effect. The one that works is only through that link. But I want you to hear this clearly. What I just described is a support. A tool. What happened today did not require a tool, because what you did today, that quiet, unrewarded, unperformed act is exactly what a brain in active gamma does naturally. You were not fighting yourself to make that choice. You were simply being who you are. And that is why God smiled. Not because you performed, because he caught a glimpse of your original design, still intact, still working, still choosing rightly when there was nothing to gain. That brings us to the third thing I want to show you before we go deeper, because what God's smile tells us is not just about what you did. It is about who you are. And this is where I need you to stay close, because what I am about to say is going to feel like it is about someone worthy, someone significant, someone other than you. I need you to stay open to the possibility that it is exactly about you. There is a kind of person who carries light into rooms without trying. Not by being loud or impressive, but by being genuinely present. The room is different because they entered it. The conversation shifts. The person who was about to give up does not. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because something real showed up. You are that person. The quiet choice you made, the one no one saw, is what that kind of person does. There is a kind of person who has been through something that could have hardened them, and it did not. It deepened them instead. Something broke, and instead of that breaking producing bitterness, it produced a strange capacity to sit with people who are also broken and not try to fix them too fast. To simply be there. To translate the language of pain in a way that only someone who has lived it can. You are that person. The thing you have been through is not a wound that still needs to heal before you are useful. It is already the medicine. There is a kind of person who cannot pretend, not because they are rigid or difficult, but because they are made for something real. When the room goes false, they feel it in their body. When the conversation requires them to perform something they do not believe, something in them resists. This is not a flaw. This is design. You were made to carry truth, not as a weapon, as a way of being. You are that person too. And there is something else, something that is going to land more fully in the second part of this message. Because everything I have told you so far, the act, the science, the identity, it is all pointing toward something larger, something that changes not just how you see today, but how you see your entire season. The wilderness you have been in, the waiting, the hiddenness, there is a reason for it, a specific reason, not a vague spiritual-sounding reason. A real one, and it has everything to do with where you are about to go. Stay with me. Before this season you are in, there was a version of God that many of us were handed. And it looked something like this. Someone watching, patient, yes, willing to forgive, yes, but essentially waiting for the list to get longer on the right side, waiting for the failures to stop showing up, watching the way a teacher watches a struggling student with a kind of careful, measured hope that does not quite reach the level of delight. Maybe you were never told that directly. Maybe it was just the atmosphere, the sense that grace was a debt being slowly repaid rather than a gift already given. The sense that God was willing to use you one day when you were finally more ready than you are now. The sense that the relationship was real, but the pleasure, the genuine, uncomplicated pleasure of a father looking at a child and simply being glad, that felt like something reserved for people further along. I want to sit with that image for a moment, because I think a lot of what keeps chosen ones from receiving what is already theirs comes from this exact picture. Not from rebellion, not from disbelief, from a subtle, persistent sense that they are in the category of beloved but not yet delightful. And I want to show you something. Go back to David in the field. Not the moment Samuel arrived with the oil. Go back further. Go back to the years before that, the long years of ordinary faithfulness, the lion and the bear that nobody wrote about until David mentioned them himself in a moment of courage. Nobody was recording those years. No prophet was on the way yet. No promotion was visible. Just a young man in a field, choosing to be faithful to something small because it was simply who he was. And the Bible says, God saw a man after his own heart, not after the throne, not after the battles, after the field, after the quiet, after the years of choosing rightly when there was no audience and no reward. God looked at those hidden years, and what he felt was not patience. It was not tolerance. It was not the careful hope of someone waiting for a student to improve. It was delight. And here is the mega revelation I have been building toward. The one that is going to recontextualize everything you have heard so far. You have been measuring yourself by what you have not yet done, what you have not yet become, what you have not yet produced, or proven, or made visible. And from that measuring, you have concluded, I am somewhere in the middle of the story, not at the beginning, not at the end, somewhere in the forming, somewhere in the not yet. But God is not looking at the gap between who you are and who you will be. God is looking at what you choose in the quiet, when there is no audience, when there is nothing to gain, when the reasonable thing would be to hold back or protect yourself or wait for certainty before you give anything away. And when he sees you choose the way you chose today, something happens that I can only describe in the language the Bible actually uses. He is pleased. Not a future tense pleased, not a conditional pleased, present tense, active. Right now, in the middle of your unfinished story, in the middle of the season that still has unanswered questions and unresolved circumstances, he looks at you and he is glad. There is an image I want to give you, a gardener watching a seed in the ground. The seed is not visible from the surface. Nothing is happening yet, by any outward measure. The ground looks the same as it did yesterday. A person who did not know what was in the ground might walk past and see nothing worth noting. But the gardener knows what is in the seed. The gardener planted it. The gardener understands what is happening beneath the surface, the impossible, quiet, invisible work of becoming, the reaching downward before the reaching upward, the root system being built before the trunk can stand. And the gardener is not impatient, not disappointed, not checking off days until the thing is finally useful. The gardener is expectant, full of anticipation, because the gardener knows what is in that seed, and to someone who knows what is coming, the ground that looks empty is not empty at all. It is full of future. That is how God watches you right now, not waiting for you to finally perform, not hoping you will eventually get it right, expectant, because he knows what is in you, and to someone who can see what is forming in the quiet, in the hidden, in the faithful, ordinary, unannounced years, you are not behind schedule. You are exactly on time. You are not someone God tolerates on the way to being someone he can use. You are someone God looks at right now, today, in the middle of all of it, and smiles. The wilderness you have been in is not a holding room, it is a formation room. And the specific thing being formed in you, the quality of heart that causes you to choose gently when hardness would be easier, to give without calculating return, to stay faithful to something invisible when everything visible is suggesting you let go, that quality does not come from ease. It cannot be taught in a classroom or manufactured in a season of success. It can only be built here, in the quiet, in the long, in the unseen. And what you are building is exactly what will be needed, specifically, precisely needed, in the thing that is ahead of you. Not a general calling, a specific one. And the people who will need you, the ones you have not met yet, the rooms you have not walked into yet, they will need exactly this version of you, the one that knows how to stay, the one that knows how to give without needing to receive, the one that knows what it is to be in the middle of the story and still choose to be present. The wilderness is not a punishment for unworthiness. It is a preparation for someone who will need to have been exactly here. Now, I want to give you something practical to take with you. Something you can use tomorrow morning and every morning after, because what changes when you know what you now know is not just how you feel today. It is how you hold your ordinary days from this point forward. You were not made to live, performing for an audience that may or may not notice. You were made to live from something settled, from a place that does not need to earn what has already been given. And the daily practice of returning to that place is not complicated. It does not require a perfect morning routine or an hour of silence or conditions that are rarely available. It requires something smaller and truer than any of that. When you wake tomorrow, before the day asks anything of you, before the notifications and the obligations and the long list of things that need your attention, I want you to let 3 things become true in your body before you move. The first is this: you are already seen. Not seen in the way of being observed and evaluated. Seen in the way of being known and delighted in. Let that be the first thing that is true in the morning before anything else is. The second is this: your quiet choices carry weight you will never fully measure. The small thing you do today with integrity when no one is watching will matter in ways that will not be visible for months or years. Let yourself believe that today. Just for today. The third is this: the season you are in is not delay. It is not the waiting room before the real story begins. This is the real story. What is being built in you right now, in the ordinary, in the hidden, in the faithful? This is not prelude. This is the thing itself. Speak those 3 things, not as performance, as declaration, as a chosen one, receiving what is already true rather than reaching for what is not yet visible. And I want to say one more thing before we close, because there is a voice that may have been running underneath everything I have just said. It sounds like this. This is for other people, maybe for people further along, more consistent, more sure of themselves. Not quite for me, not yet. I still have too much to sort out before I am the person this message is describing. I know that voice, and I want to say this to it directly. That voice is not discernment. It is not God reviewing your record and finding it incomplete. It is the oldest lie in the longest book, the suggestion that you are the one exception, the one person for whom the welcome does not quite apply, the one for whom the table is set but not quite ready. It is not true. Unworthiness is not a spiritual position. It is not humility. Real humility does not refuse a gift. Real humility receives it with open hands and says, I do not fully understand this, but I am willing. That is all that is required. Not certainty, not a cleaned-up record. Just willingness. If you are willing, say this quietly, right where you are. Just this: I receive it. I do not fully understand it, but I receive it. That is enough. That is more than enough. Now, let us close this well. I want to pray with you, not over you, with you. Because what you carry out of this matters more than what you heard inside it. If you are willing, take one quiet breath. Let your shoulders settle. Let the day's noise soften for just a moment. You do not have to close your eyes, just be here. God, I speak over this person right now. I speak over the season they are in, the long, quiet, hidden season that has asked so much of them without showing them much in return. I honor what that has cost. I do not minimize it. And I say, it has not been empty, not one day of it. Every faithful choice in the unseen has been seen. Every time they chose rightly when wrongness would have been so much easier, that was marked. That mattered. That is still mattering. I speak over the identity that has been forming in the quiet. The person who carries light without needing a stage. The person whose wounds have become a language for those who are also wounded. The person who cannot live falsely because they were made for truth. The person who stays when leaving would be justified. These are not aspirations. These are already true. I declare them into the ears of the one listening now. I speak over the days ahead. May the ordinary moments carry the weight they were always meant to carry. May the quiet choices be made freely, not from fear of what God will think, but from the settled knowing of what God already thinks. May the seed in the ground grow without needing to explain itself. May the formation continue without the one being formed needing to see the blueprint in order to trust the builder. And this, above all this, may you need the applause of heaven less because you have the presence of it. May you go from this moment as someone who is not waiting to be approved of, as someone who already is, as someone God looked at today and smiled. Because he did. You made God smile today. Not by being perfect, by being genuine. By being you, the real you, the one that was there before the world started asking you to perform. That version of you is the one that has always mattered most. That is the one he made. That is the one he sees. Go as that person. The God who smiled today has not looked away. He will not. Go knowing that. Go carrying that. Let it change the way you walk into every quiet, ordinary, beautiful moment that is waiting for you. You are seen. You are delighted in. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. Go.